What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and thank you so much. All of you have been loyal subscribers and watching all the videos so far. And if you haven't already, please subscribe below and hit the little notifications button if you want to know when the next video is coming out. Really helps us get the message out there. Okay, so today we're talking about being psychopaths. In particular, we're talking about something that nice guys and people pleasers are often afflicted with, a certain niche of nice guys and people pleasers, which is a growing apathy and unemotional kind of disconnect with the world that eventually leads you to start wondering, am I a fucking psychopath? Now, I've been working with nice guys for fucking decades, really, and I've learned that there's a lot of nuance. There's lots of different types of nice guys, different traits that some have and some don't, and there's certain things in the middle that we all have, and then we have our own little unique take on it. And there's a certain niche of nice guys that become very unemotional. They kind of suppress and block feelings, and especially connection type feelings with others. They have an avoidant attachment style. And they do this usually because of a response to the environment they're in. Parenting, school environment, culture, this makes a big difference. So if you get a nice guy from a culture that, say, embraces being emotional, like a Latin culture, you're less likely to be like this. Whereas if you come from like New Zealand or the UK, where emotions are shamed often, then you're more likely to be like this. But then it also depends, if you had the kind of father that says, I'll give you something to cry about every time you cried, and real boys don't fucking cry, that kind of parenting, you're more likely to be like this. Or if you're bullied at school, like I was, for being emotional or sensitive. I'll give you my backstory. Started very young. My parents weren't too hard on me about being emotional that I remember, I don't think, but probably the standard issue stuff of the 80s, which is, I'll give you something to cry about, kind of trying to get you to stop crying, that kind of thing. Anyway, they weren't too bad. But when I got to school, I discovered for the first time that I was a highly sensitive person. It's called hypersensitivity. I cried more than the other kids did. I'm 5, 6 years old. The other kids only cried every now and then. I cried like every day over something. Getting confronted by a teacher, falling over and skinning my knee. I was like the pussy ass kid, or at least that's the impression I was given. It was that any emotion I had seemed to always bring tears to my eyes. I didn't get badly bullied for this. I just got ostracized. I got left out. I had no friends. I spent a lot of my lunchtimes walking around alone. It's pretty brutal, actually, as a young boy to be dreading the lunch break because you're just going to have to find some safe spot to hang out and wait for the bell so you can go back to class. So my first couple of years, I had no friends because I was the crybaby kid. And then when I got to my next school, I moved schools a few times when I was younger. I don't know how I did this exactly, but one day I just turned it off. I realized I can stop it. I can stop the tears from coming out. I can stop the crying from happening. And that coincided with acceptance from my peers. So the ostracism stopped when I stopped crying. Now I'm being picked for the rugby teams at lunchtime and handball and hanging out with the cool kids and going on bike rides and being invited to people's houses and so on. I was like, whoa. And as a kid, I think I was wrong in this, but as a kid, I made the connection like they like me because I'm like this. I've controlled my emotions. I saw other kids getting picked on for crying and stuff. So that's the connection I made. It didn't occur to me that they might like me for my personality or something like that. It was just like, oh, now I'm one of them because I don't cry. This escalated in high school. I went to what I think is a fairly rough high school. Okay, certainly rougher than like the middle ground. Lots of fights. There were like children of gang members in the school kind of thing. This is in high school. Big school, very diverse, people from all over the world there. And yeah, lots of fights. Rugby was the kind of key thing. So everything was about aggression and dominance. And, you know, you learned that anybody basically who cared about anything in any emotional way was deemed to be a loser. And the cool kids were the ones who didn't seem to care about anything and got into trouble and never showed any real emotion other than kind of contempt or something like that. So I'm surrounded by this culture now that really kind of encourages, or should I say, discourages emotion and encourages psychopathy. Uh, Very much so. So by the time I get to my 20s, I felt nothing, really. I was basically immune to feeling. I spent so much time either being teased or teasing for feeling emotions. I got to a point where, in the friend circle I had, you could never say, I'm feeling sad or anything like that, right? It makes me laugh because I think you would never get away with that back then in that circle I was in. The amount of shit you'd get, you'd instantly be called gay. You just didn't have a chance. And I'd been shutting down emotion for in the most emotional period of my life. For teenage years, I've been learning to shut down emotion. I mean, there were plenty of holes in my wall in my bedroom covered by posters. I had to get out somehow, but when I wasn't raging to corn alone in my room, the rest of the time I was putting on a poker face. It wasn't that I didn't feel anything, it's just I didn't let it come out. But eventually that led to not actually feeling anything. I found it hard to figure out what I even liked, what I disliked. Other than specific music tastes, I didn't really know what I was into. I kind of just went with the flow. I was very easygoing because it didn't matter one way or the other. I just followed other people's decisions. I went with the crowd. I wasn't a leader because if it was up to me, I'd just do nothing all day because that's what I felt like doing. Get to my mid-20s, I started to worry, am I actually a psychopath? I started researching it. It's what started my lifelong obsession with psychopathy. I started looking into it and I'm thinking, man, I tick a lot of these fucking boxes, you know? Not the kind of cut people's skin off and use it as wallpaper kind of psychopath, but just the no feeling, no conscience, no really caring about anything, narcissism. I had all of that. When we dial back and we look at it, what we're really seeing is absolutely a consequence of nice guy syndrome and people pleasing. Ultimately, nice guy syndrome and people pleasing is about emotional control. That's at the heart of it all. That's what it's all about. It's about controlling your emotions so that I can control mine. I make you feel good so that you don't do anything that makes me not feel good. That's what it's all about. It's always about that. I avoid pain and I avoid conflict. I avoid chaos. I avoid anything that isn't either happy or dull, right? I want to be numb. And I was a particular type of people pleaser. There's different types. I talk about them in other content, and you can message me if you want to figure out what type you are. Get in touch with me, dan@brojo.org, and I'll send you like a little questionnaire type thing I made up to help you figure out where you should be focusing. But I was what's called a performer, or I call it a performer. It's like being a method actor. I'd created a persona, Dan, the funny, cool guy. At least that's what I thought he was. And I had to act as that guy all the time. Like a method actor, I was never out of character because I could never get caught. I can't put the mask down because then people will be like, who the fuck's this guy? And I'd never be able to recover from it. So in any social situation with anybody except a couple of close friends, I was Dan the performing guy, with some slight variations depending on the audience. And that's where what's called the chameleon effect. So you kind of change your colors according to your environment. So you'll be kind of a bit rough and hard and banter with the tradie type guys, or you'll be sort of thoughtful and intelligent with the artistic woman type people. And you'll be political and savvy and witty with the heavy metal band people. So on. You like adjust, you fine tune your character to be as pleasing as possible to the crowd you're in. I saw an interview with a psychopath on YouTube the other day, and she was talking about how she feels like a gas that just fills the space it's in, but has no form itself. And I know exactly what she's talking about. That is the performing chameleon. They come in and they fill the space that they're required to fill to be pleasing and popular and noteworthy and lovable. But when you leave them alone, when nobody's watching, they're nothing at all. And that's the feeling that comes when you've been a nice guy who's suppressed himself for a long time, is when you're all alone, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you are without the act, without the performance. It's a very fucking scary thing to feel. It's you're nothing. You're nothing at all. You're, I often think, what it's like if you play a computer game like Grand Theft Auto or whatever, where you're like a little character and there's other characters walking around, pedestrians and such. You ever look at them and go, wonder what happens to them when they walk around the corner and they're out of sight of me? Are they no longer in the game, or are they just sitting there waiting? And that's what it's kind of like being a nice guy chameleon, is being one of these background characters. When the light's not on you, you don't do anything, you're nothing. You have to wait until you're seen before you can come into life and play your role. And it's a horrible feeling. This is why I think a lot of nice guys end up depressed and suicidal. Because what's the point in living when you're nothing at all? Of course, they don't realize that they've created this. This is something that can be reversed. This is not the way they started out. And I'm not speaking to the actual psychopath nice guys out there, the kind of red pill, run woman over type psychopaths out there. I'm talking about the ones who train themselves to be psychopaths as a defense mechanism against painful emotions and painful social situations. Essentially, what you've got is an avoidant attachment. You can look that up. I'm not the expert in attachment styles, but there's some good science behind this. Avoidant attachment is really about keeping people at arm's length. It's about seeing anyone getting in too close and intimate as a threat, something that's either going to just give you lots of emotions to deal with, which you don't want, or they're going to hurt you, right? They're getting close enough where they can actually hurt your feelings. You don't want them to get too far away, so you're lonely either. You just want this perfect middle distance. Like being popular by being funny is a great way to keep someone at a middle distance. Like they want to be around you because you're funny, but they don't actually know you because you're hidden underneath the humor. Perfect distance, or being interesting or smartest person in the room or whatever. It keeps people around you, being rich maybe. Keeps people around you, but they never get inside. And that's ultimately what the nice guy, psychopath, chameleon, avoidant attachment guy is trying to achieve. What's that fucking, that's that arm's length. Don't leave me alone, but don't come near me. And it's done with nonchalance, with humor, with dishonesty, lots and lots of dishonesty, suppressed emotion, being superficial. Like I remember a lot of the groups I hung out with at school and stuff, all they talked about all day long were cars and sports. They never talked about anything personal, It's just cars and sports. I've listened to literally thousands of hours of conversation about cars. And I don't like cars. I got no interest in them. It's just a fucking machine to me. It's nothing. And the way I just sat there and pretended like I understood, pretended like I cared, pretended like I was interested. Oh, brutal. Years of my life wasted. Years. I don't think anybody there was actually enjoying it that much themselves anyway. Being hot and cold. So, chasing someone when they run away from you, but then turning your face to them when they come in close, like always making sure they don't get too close, especially in relationships. And alcohol and drugs. That's a great way to not only disinhibit, but also it can be an emotional release. Like you can get high so you can get all the shit out, and then when you're sober, you go back to being suppressed. So if you're worried that you are a psychopath, there are a couple of signs that can put you at ease to let you know that that's not your issue. Okay. For a start, social anxiety or any type of anxiety. One of the things that took me a while to realize in my 20s when I was worried about being a psychopath was that I was anxious nearly all the time in social situations. Whenever I went into a pub or whatever, or a bar, I'd need to go straight to the toilet to take a shit because the guts would just start churning. If I was on a date, my balls would shrink up into my body. I was so scared. So I had anxiety all the time, just either low or high level, but never zero. I was always anxious. I had waves of depression. So, I don't know, 3 months out of every year, something like that, spread out, I'd just lose all interest in life. I wouldn't get suicidal, but I just wouldn't want to get off the couch. I'd just smoke weed and watch videos all the time, jack it to porn. I just didn't want to participate in life. I just wanted to be out. So those two, if you get any sense of anxiety, if you're ever worried about the future, if you're ever worried about how things are going to work out, or any depression, you're ever gutted about how things have happened, or you don't like who you are, you can't be a psychopath. Okay, psychopaths do not experience anxiety at all. They don't experience depression at all. They'd never regret anything to any emotional level. They might look back rationally and go, that was the wrong move, but they don't feel anything about it. And they certainly never hate themselves and want to kill themselves. They are so grandiose, so narcissistic, that they always see themselves as the hero in the story, and that never changes. They never lose that, ever. So if you're ever in any of those spaces, anxious, depressed, not totally loving yourself, then you don't need to worry about being a psychopath. You're just psychopathic. You've learned psychopathy to protect yourself, but you're not actually a genuine psychopath. It's not your true personality. And of course, caring for others. If you have any interest in the well-being of other people, if somebody hurting your loved ones hurts you, if you feel guilty when you break someone's heart, if you feel anything about other people's suffering, then you're not a psychopath. And a lot of nice guys, actually, one of the driving motives to their people-pleasing dishonesty is trying to keep people happy. They don't want other people to suffer. They don't realize that they're going about it in an ineffective short-term method, but there is a genuine givingness underneath there, like, I want you to have a good life. If you feel like that, you're not a psychopath. And of course, if you used to have emotions, if you're a sensitive kid like I was, or you've had times when no one's watching and you get really excited about something or really sad or whatever, if there's any moments in your history where you had big emotional, sensations, then what it's telling you is the rest of the time you're faking it. That was real. So recovery. I've already covered this in some other videos. I'll try and remember to link them below. There's particularly one where you start talking about your preferences. You need to start talking about your emotions, expressing them, even if they barely show up on the meter. Even if you're a 0.1 out of 100 for feeling something, you express it. Because the expressing it will expand it. So let's say you get pissed off very briefly about someone cutting you in, cutting in traffic and cutting you off. And then, of course, you suppress it instantly. You go, and you shut it down like you do. Even if you're all alone, just say, "Oh, I got angry for a second there," or that made me angry. I was a little bit frustrated there. Just like mention it, give it life, give it breath, allow it to exist, acknowledge it, respect it, even if it was minuscule, so small you're like, it doesn't even count. Yeah, it always counts. Even if it was just kind of a rational, cognitive version of emotion, you're like, I think I'm sad about that. There's no major sensations physically, but you'd prefer that didn't happen, and you keep thinking about it and wishing it didn't happen. You can say, I'm sad that happened, or I regret my behavior. Just give voice to it. What you'll find is the more you do this, the more you'll actually feel it. And you've got to just be brave here. You've got to face your fucking feelings, as totally cheese dick as that sounds. Okay? You've got to face your feelings. You've got to let yourself feel something. Put your phone away. Stop distracting yourself. Stop jerking it to porn and smoking drugs. And just have a little feeling. Just have it and say it. Even if it's only to yourself. Just give it some respect. Okay? Why, by the way? Because being a psychopath's not fucking working for you. Being a method actor chameleon, the gas that fills the space and has no form, that's a miserable fucking existence, okay? Being emotionally connected to other people, actually caring about stuff, having passion for things, that's a way better life. I fucking promise you it's better. It'll hurt at first. It's just like using muscles you've never used before, and you'll be scared, and it'll be chaotic, and it'll be messy, but it's way, way better than what you're doing, okay? Put it this way, if what you're doing is working, you wouldn't have made it to the end of this video. You wouldn't even be watching this. You'd just be off living your great life, right? Start having confrontations. Start saying, I like this and I don't like that, to people about their behavior, right? Start letting people know where you actually stand on shit and stand up for it, okay? You can give them rewards too. You can say, I like it when you do that. But really, you need to start focusing on saying, I don't like, which is just a very basic way of saying, I feel anger, I feel sadness, I feel disappointment, I feel disgust, the kind of feelings that you generally don't express. You can start by just saying, I don't like that. I prefer that didn't happen. If I could choose between that and this, I'd choose this rather than that. To start letting yourself say that, like I said, even if you only barely feel the preference, one of the ways you can do it is you kind of put a gun to your head metaphorically and say, if I had to choose between A and B, which one would I choose? Because you're never 50-50 exactly. You always slightly favour one option. Well, express that. If somebody turns the music on in the radio, while you're in the car with them, ask yourself, like, if I had to choose between this music being on and it not being on, what would I choose? If I had to, gun to my head, had to choose something, and nobody else was going to be affected, it doesn't matter what I choose, they're going to be okay with it. Which one would I choose? And if the answer is, I'd rather not listen to this, then you have to say, I don't like this song. Because that's the truth. The more you say it, the more comfortable you'll become, the braver you'll become, the easier you'll become to say things, and then the more you will actually feel it. I've had this occur to myself and so many people I've worked with, so many of my clients. You actually start to give a shit. You start to feel stuff again, which makes you feel alive. Like you got a reason to be. You're not just an empty gas filling the space. You're a fucking person. You're a unique person. Preferences, feelings, interests. It'll all start to come out. And then you actually have something to fucking live for. So, those are my thoughts on being a nice guy psychopath. If you want assistance to break through this and you want to make sure that this is the last year that you feel like that, get in touch. Dan@brojo.org. We'll talk about coaching. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.